Brad Sham has been calling Dallas Cowboys football for forever and a day, and we are thrilled to have here back on the Rich Eisen Show the voice of the Dallas Cowboys in his 39th season on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. He's Brad Sham. How you been, Brad?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Let's get right into it.
I don't think Eli's coming here.
I don't think he's coming here either. So let's start with the basics. What do you think is the state of the Dallas Cowboys right now?
Well, it's not good right now. At 10:30 tonight Central Time, it could be a lot better. They're a little bit of a mess right at the moment. They and I think everybody's culpable. I don't think you can hit an unexpected ditch like this without. In fact, there are four people who I hold completely blameless: L.P. Ladisar, the long snapper, and Chris Jones, the punter, and Dan Bailey, the kicker, because they have been absolutely perfect in their jobs, and Sean Lee, who has not been on the field the last 3 weeks.
Well, is he going to be on the field tonight?
I don't think so. It could change, but they were iffy enough during the week, and if he doesn't play tonight, then you've got, because this is their week after Thanksgiving, so now you have the mini bye, and by next week it would be a full month since he last played, and for the hamstring that he's dealing with, that would probably be best. So my guess is that he won't, but that the last time I talked to anybody about it was yesterday morning, so it's possible something could change for tonight. It would surprise me.
Why is Sean Lee that all-important Jenga piece for this Cowboys defense?
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the place that the defensive coaching staff is culpable. I mean, he's a great player, and they don't have anybody even remotely like him, but he can't be. I mean, he just can't be that. He cannot be that irreplaceable. You could lose, but to be non-competitive for 3 consecutive second halves doesn't make any sense. Some of it, it's like most of the stuff that happens in football, Rich, and you know it. It's twined together. So some of it is now their depth is less than they thought it would be because of preseason and training camp injuries to 3 rookie defensive backs who they drafted, who all made the team. They thought they were all going to play. One of them is going to start tonight, and it's going to be his first NFL start, and Chido Awuzie. And they didn't bring several guys back because they were older players, and they thought that it was not the best football economics. Okay, well, you missed them. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right decision at the time, but you missed them on the field. And then the coaching staff just has to figure out ways to be more productive than they've been. And so that's why I say everybody's culpable.
Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys here on the Rich Eisen Show. And in terms of that, my colleague at the NFL Media Group, Ian Rappaport, reported this past week that Cowboy players are upset over the game planning and certainly the in-game planning, and in terms of the fact that offensive players are calling out blitz schemes before they're actually run, and they're right almost every time. Are you hearing the same thing, Brad?
And not as much as he is, and I don't know how many players he's talking to, but I think that one of the signs that things are going bad is when you have players look up and say, "Hey, it's his fault." But you have to look at everything. When you've had 3 second halves like they've had, it's not a secret that Rod Marinelli doesn't like the blitz. His philosophy, going all the way back to when he started coaching, is that if you blitz, somewhere there's a hole back there somewhere. A good quarterback is going to find it. So you got to get where you're going with 4 guys. And they've done, believe me, an exhaustive study of the last 3 games especially, and when they've given up the chunk plays. They gave up an uncommon number to the Los Angeles Chargers, and they have tried to figure out what defenses they were playing so they don't play those defenses, making some lineup changes. And so I think that, there may be some of that going on, but it's always a little bit of a caution sign for me when you hear someone who is never around the team quoting players as calling out coaches. Is some of that probably true? Yeah, I think they're probably all a little disgruntled. But the best thing those guys can do is look in the mirror and see if they've executed what they're doing well. And if they're doing the best they can, then there will be changes made above them. But that's not their concern right now.
Well, in terms of that, do you think Jason Garrett is coaching for his job over the last 5 weeks?
Right now,
Brad?
I don't. I think that I could see some staff changes coming. But right now, I don't think that. Rich, it's the same staff that was 13-3 last year. It's the same staff with a change or two that was 12-4 2 years before that. So they didn't all of a sudden get stupid. The team's different because the players are different. Now, you have to coach different players differently. You can't coach them the same way you coached last year's team. But the same coaches have been successful before. They're not doing a good enough job so far in the last 3 weeks. I mean, they're 5-6, so that means they were 5-3. So either it's a little more complicated than a tweet can reveal, or they all suddenly went brain dead in a 3-week period. And I got a little trouble with that theory.
Brad Sham, voice of the Dallas Cowboys here on the Rich Eisen Show. Is Dez hurt? He just looks different. He looks like he can't win certain one-on-one battles. 50-50 balls are more like 60-40 balls or 70-30 balls now.
I don't think he's hurt. I do think that there's not a try-harder guy on the team. I think this is my personal opinion. No doctor or coach has told me this. But just watching him, I think that the leg injuries, various kinds, hamstring, knee, various kinds of foot, leg injuries that he's had over the last few years may have taken some of his explosiveness from him, some of the leaping ability. And so there again, it's incumbent on him and the coaching staff to find different kinds of routes. There's nothing wrong with him running a deep slant. Some of those one-on-one matchups he's having a little trouble with. So it's up to the coaching staff to try to put him in the best possible position to be successful.
And how ticked off is Jerry? How ticked off do you think
he's ticked off, but he's got more than his football team that he's a little ticked off at right now.
I know that. Well, I mean, in the fact that the football team is struggling
is Jerry's world right now.
Yeah, that's the point. You know, I mean, it just seems like the shots that we've been seeing on national television of zooming in on him, just I think pondering what could have been this season with him having his jacket and his bust and his ring now.
Yeah, but maybe the ponderings were incorrect. I mean, usually my experience is that usually what happens when the media gets down on a player or coaching staff or team, first of all, the team, coaching staff, and administration is several steps ahead of them. And also, a lot of times when someone says this is going to be really good, and it turns out not to be really good, and that makes the person who said it was going to be look bad. And the people who say that publicly don't usually like that, so there's got to be a head roll somewhere. So maybe the team was overestimated. I really think that one of the big problems is they don't have enough depth to overcome the wrong injuries. Very few teams do, and they didn't have about 4 players that they counted on really being something. Couldn't contribute for most of the first half of the year because of training camp injuries that took them out for a long period of time. But they still should be more competitive than they are now, and they might yet be. So we'll see. I will say this: they had that blowout game in Denver in week 2, and that was not just the second half. That was a total disaster from getting off. I'm not sure somebody didn't get hurt getting off the bus. My experience is a good team, a really good contending team, never has a game like that. And that was a red flag to me. And then, okay, looks like they can compete, and then they've had things happen. I mean, you can break these 3 losses down. The Atlanta game happened because they had pass protection problems, and the coaching staff, by its own admission, by the way, did not react well enough or quickly enough, and then things kind of snowballed. But the reason it can't be an excuse is that the team they're playing tonight has the same record, and they've had worse injury problems. Washington has placed 8 players, and I might be conservative by 1 or 2. Washington's put 8 players who played, either started or were significant rotation players on both sides of the ball, on injured reserve since they last played the Cowboys 4 weeks ago.
It's unbelievable. And then, obviously, Zeke was the big difference maker in the last time these two faced each other. And some of us may have, I frankly thought that would be, it would be bad. If you lose one of the best players, you're not as good. I didn't think it would be crippling. And maybe the way their offense is set up, maybe it was. A couple more minutes left with Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys. Where is Zeke?
I don't know. I don't know. Not my week to watch him. I think he's out of the country somewhere.
He still is out of the country, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
And then is there any other time in Cowboy history with you around a team that this reminds you of, that this type of crossroads reminds you of?
Well, sure. I mean, look, the last 3 weeks have been a big surprise because it looked like they were pretty good. But, Landry's last team was 3-13. That was the worst football team I've seen in 39 years. And then the next year, Jimmy Johnson's first one was 1-15, and Dave Campo had 3 5-11 teams, and they lost the first ever game the Houston Texans ever played. That hadn't happened since 1960 with the Minnesota Vikings, and they lost a game to the Rams in 2000 and I want to say 8 when Romo was hurt and Brad Johnson quarterbacked him, and the Rams hadn't scored an offensive touchdown in the first half all year, and they scored 3 in the first quarter. And this is just bad football. We'll all survive.
Yeah, I know. But you were naming some pretty low moments right there.
Hey,
Brad.
39 years. I'm lucky to have some high moments.
That's a lot of them.
I'm happy. If you don't suffer, you don't know when you're celebrating.
Well, I think it wasn't Denzel Washington who came on our show, Chris Brockman. He's a big Cowboy fan, Brad. Yeah. He said you can't have a testimony without a test, is what he said.
There you go. It's exactly right.
Why don't you drop that?
I don't know what will happen by the end of the year. Right now, I can't say anything convincing to either you or me that they're going to win again this year because I haven't seen it for a month. Mm-hmm. But they might, and I know screwy things happen all the time. And I know they've got some guys who are better players than they've been playing. So I read on Twitter today someone locally said, well, if the Cowboys lose tonight, then their season's over. And really? Because I'm supposed to be in New Jersey next Sunday.
That's right. I take you watching Geno Smith play.
Yeah, I think I'm going. So I don't think the season's going to be over. It's not. It means they're not going to be 10-6 at best. But there's a lot of interesting stuff still to happen.
Brad, always love chatting. Really appreciate the call.
Good
we'll see you tonight.
Good to talk to you. See you tonight.
You got it. That's Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys, on Twitter @boys_VOX.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.